some aspect of education shows that you're literate. You know how to put words down on paper, control the grammar and syntax, these things which become important when you become an editor. But beyond that, it's a combination of things. I mean, I would liken getting into comics is to deciding you want to be an actor, a Hollywood actor, which means you've got to be good and you've got to be lucky. Part of it is to be on at least the fringes of the scene and introduce yourself to people without being annoying, be talented, and hope that with a bit of luck. I think you'll see for most of us that none of us had, it wasn't like bam, you're in. It was a series of things that made it work out, a weird math equation.
Thank you.
I have a question. With pencilers, I think it's easier to tell what the it factor is and what makes them worthwhile. But for a writer who's trying to break through, like, what is that it factor that makes you say, I want to see what this guy will say?
I'll speak to this. You are right. The one great advantage an artist has is you only have to make one good first impression. And you only need to find one editor who likes it. You follow me? When you look at art, you have an immediate reaction, positive or negative. And quite frankly, if I see your art one year and I don't like it, and the next year I like it, all is forgiven. All I care about is that art I like. You follow me? Also understand, and this is true for editors across the board, is that you make no time investment in responding to your art. It's kind of like if you walk into a bar and you see, pardon the sexism, you see a pretty girl. She's either pretty or she's not. A team of specialists can get together and try and convince me that we're cultural pretty. She's not pretty to me. I get that she's pretty to other people, but whatever. I'm not sure that by the same token, I might see somebody who'd be like crazy. The thing is, that's the good news if you're an artist. Now, more to the point about being a writer, it is difficult. These are the big leagues. It's not a surprise that we find a lot of people who distinguish themselves in media ranks. People that work for other small press companies and distinguish themselves. We work with playwrights, Roberto Sacasa, TV writers, Mike Benson, movie guys, Kevin Smith. We cast a wide net like that. I think that one of the most useful things you can do as a writer is write comics. Go out there and do it. Make ash cans. An ash can is a comic book you produce at a Kinko's. How expensive is that? Either you're going to buy Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or you're going to come to the convention with a bunch of copies. Make up your mind. Sorry, I love Marvel vs. Capcom. I don't want to do that anyway. But and the last thing I say is that the internet as well. Web comics, we notice it. The good news if you're a writer is make web comics, find a good artist, somebody that's not going to mess up your story. Maybe it's you, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's somebody you just meet online, and produce a web comic. If we start reading, and we like what we're reading, we'll keep reading. It ain't no thing for us to keep reading. You follow me? Oh, yeah. By the same token, if we don't read it, then go to the next guy.
Thank you very much.
Well, actually, to piggyback off that, something CB said once, with like what you said, with art, it's easy to recognize almost automatically whether someone has it or not. With writing, most people, unless you're a professional critiquer of writing, me, I don't know good writing from bad writing. And I think a lot of people are that way, and that's why it's so important that as you're doing the things like with the ash cans, to get your stuff in front of as many people as possible and get true feedback. It's good and fine to show it to your mom, but I guarantee she's going to love it no matter what. So get it in front of people that you know are going to be honest with you, and be really ready to hear that honesty, because the best thing that can happen to you is to get torn down, because it'll build you up in the long run. I think I've been torn down, and I'm sure you've been torn down a bunch. But yeah, that would be my advice.
There's something else I think Sadie said before, and Bonnie, correct, but one of the big things with the writer is just, I have to say write, but write, and if you can write, you get published, you do these ash cans, you write a novel, whatever you do, publish it online. It shows also a level of commitment. I think everybody thinks they can write. I think I can write. I don't want to be a writer. At one point in my life, I'm like, I'm going to be a writer. I can write, and I'm not sure if I'm good or not, but I also didn't have the commitment to follow through. But I was one of the people who thought, yeah, I should be a writer. Just give me a chance. I'll write here as Superman. But no one or whoever is cool. And you know, if you show the commitment to actually get that writing done, I think it helps because the editors looking, they know you're not just a guy who thinks he can write, you're a guy who does write.
We're going on and on about this, but it's true. Look, it's like if you're a writer, you don't sit there and go, wait, I'm going to wait till somebody pays me, then I'm going to start writing. You write.
Yeah.
You write because you're a writer. Same thing with an artist. Oh, I'm not going to put pen to paper until somebody pays me. I'm going to doodle. And then, no, go out and make an action plan. Show us what you can do. Minimum, you'll get better at what you do.
You can and these days you can self-publish online. You can publish your own novel, have copies to give to people, and you know, there's a lot of options.
If I could just add to that too.
Talent,
There's going to be a question that goes on forever. But, you know, I like to tell people, I like to tell writers, make sure your voice is unique. Make sure that you know what your voice is, make sure you know what your obsessions are. Warren Ellis, you can take the credit off a comic and you know it's a Warren Ellis comic. He's obsessed with tech, he's obsessed with the future. You know, Brian Bendis, he writes a certain way. You know, don't write like anyone else, be your best you. You can only be your best you, and the more unique you are, the more valuable you become.
Thank you.
Next question.
What is the process that Marvel uses for bringing in writers from other mediums, like either from literary publishing or from screenwriters, playwrights?
Do you mean the formal bureaucratic process, or do you mean the creative?
Well, how do you decide? We're going to bring in this writer that hasn't written comics before, but has published all these things or written this movie. How does that process usually start?
Or Lindelof.
Yeah, well, again, it usually starts with a conversation. We'll know that Joss is in comics and reach out and start chatting and, hey, you want to write a comic book? And he does or he doesn't, A lot of times we get reach out from agents or from writers themselves. They're writing a TV show. Mike Benson was introduced to me by Reggie Hubbard, who ran BET, and Mike was one of his friends, and he was written for Entourage, and he was interested in writing comics. And Greg Hurwitz is a best-selling crime fiction author. Very interested in just trying out comics. He loves them. He wants to find out if he's good in them. So it's any number of ways it comes about. Sometimes we're proactive, and sometimes they're proactive. And then there's the process of teaching them, so to speak, by just showing them the forum. A lot of these guys have written screenplays or television screenplays. So we show them a comic script, and they see where the similarities are and where the similarities end.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a reporter from Australia. I'm a journalist. I've been writing online for a while, and also working as a screenwriter at conferences. I guess really. Do you have any advice for breaking outside?
Advice for screenwriters?
No, for comic novels.
Oh, advice for screenwriters looking to break into comics.
Well, no, I'm a journalist. I'm
a
journalist. As a screenwriter.
Well,
I think he also said from outside the U.S.
Oh, from outside the U.S. Is that? Yeah. Frankly, the question. I think that you're aware of the British invasion. And how Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Garth Ennis and all these guys in the UK just came in and changed our form. Frank Miller, of course, was another American born. But they took a comic book, a medium that was frequently associated with kids, and turned it into something that was more literary. So I really don't think there are cultural obstacles unless you don't speak English, in which case you need a translator. In terms of breaking in, I say that it's the same thing. If you're good, right, find someone, you've got a story. Don't come to me and say, I got this great Spider-Man story, because you know what, I'm not going to hire you. It's not going to happen. We don't know you, we don't know what you bring to the table yet. However, you go off and you have a story to tell. It's about, you name it, a unicorn barbarian, okay, right there. Find somebody, scout the internet, find somebody to draw and get it out there. There's a lot of excuses you can come up with not to do it. But at the end of the day, if you're good, you'll find a way. And if you're good, you'll keep reading.
What are they doing? It's prose online. Does that have to be drawn?
Well, there's only so much we can learn from you as a prose writer. The big gamble an editor takes with a prose writer is that a prose writer writes prose. It's a different thought process than writing a comic book script, which is more akin to a screenplay. They are separate. When you're writing prose, there's a certain process. When you're writing a screenplay or a comic book, you're much more interested in controlling time. There are a good prose writer is one step closer to the goal line, but it's not a guarantee. So that's an instance where, I'm not going to turn down. When Greg Hurwitz called me, I returned his phone call. You follow me? He's a New York Times best-selling crime writer. Why wouldn't want to speak with him and see if there's a way we can collaborate? So, having a successful prose career, more power to you. But if you want to write comments, I think it's best if you show us what you do with our medium. Okay?
Hi. So, basically, I have like about over 12 years of experience self-publishing my comic books. I came to New York about 5 years ago from Puerto Rico, and back home, all we did was just pretty much made our own comics. We just sold them, and we marketed them, and we edited them. And I've been an editor for my friends' comic books. I've translated comic books. I've done all this real experience that I have. And my plan originally was, okay, I'll just come to New York and I'll get an internship. And yes, and I got here, and the first thing I was asked was like, well, how much, what college do you go to? I'm like, I don't really go to college. So pretty much was like, closed door right there. And my question is, I've spent the past 5 years just trying to get experience and writing for websites, editing other people's books, submitting books to indie publishers, self-publishing my own books. And for me, it's like, I guess you could say it's like, I do get offers from other people, but it's never like an offer that's like, for example, I got offered an editorship for a website, a comic book website, but there was like no pay. And it's a small website. And I just feel like, at what point do I start to say, you know what, I think I'm better than this? And like, at what point, like, I just feel like, when do you know like you're spinning your wheels at one point, and like when do you know when to go, like what kind of opportunities to go for, I guess you could say. And maybe it's like an unfair question, but it's just like.
Well, it's tough. I'll take a jump at this. It's a personal line. I mean, I was a decent high school basketball player, but there ain't no way I was going to make the NBA. I was one of, you know what I'm saying? It's a bitter thing. It's like, it's just not going to happen. By the same token, I could read and write pretty well. I distinguished myself, and I kind of thought there was a career path there. Speaking specifically to your predicament about wanting an internship at Marvel is just, the way that this system is set up is you have to be getting school credit, and that's for tax reasons if nothing else. Those are just the breaks that say, if you're that determined, then enroll in community college, figure out some angle on the system so that you can make that happen. It is doable. People have done that. You seem to be wearing two different hats. One is as a writer-creator, correct? And the other one is as an editor. You might want to devote yourself to one, specialize a little bit more. If you think you're a better writer, then do what I talked about earlier. It may be a more practical path for you. Not an easy one, but a more practical one than being an editor of a website, because if I see a great webcomic book, to be honest, I'm going to go, who the hell is that writer? I'm not going to go, who the hell is that editor? Unless you've got 5 or 6 things. I'll notice an indie guy, there's editors on my radar that work for indie companies that they want to hire, because they have a voice, an editorial voice, but it's rare. So my humble piece of advice would be focus a bit more. Do the writing if that's where you're confident, and try and get noticed that way. Because editors are by and large invisible. I would prefer to be invisible than visible. Editors tend to be in the background and writing at the foreground, so maybe that's what you want to do. Is that a help at all?
It does help. I mean, I do kind of follow with that. I mean, we've, from our experience with my friends that they've moved here as well, trying to do the same thing, we've noticed that we've submitted our own books to be reviewed to editors, and it seems like we actually had one incident where an editor, we've had our artists being picked up by major publishers, and we had one incident where we were like, well, did you read the book? What did you read the book? And one of the editors was pretty honest and just said, I didn't really read the books, I just looked at the art and I liked the artist and I picked them. And so I guess my follow-up would be, well, how do you really kind of stand out from that? How do you really kind of do that?
One thing I might say, you might want to look also how you're pitching to these guys. If they're not interested in reading it for whatever reason, maybe that editor is just lazy, or maybe I'll be honest, maybe the pitch you gave them, because I'll get hit. I can't hire people, but I get hit in comics all the time. It's like, oh, you should read my comics, it's really good. and then they walk off and like, I have no idea what this is about. I don't know why I should be reading it. I don't know why should I carry this all the way back home and read it and then actually